by the end of our talk together today in this video, you're going to know exactly what the queen wound is. You're going to know why we have this wound and what it looks like in the wild, meaning in your real life, in your real writing practice, in your real efforts. And I'm going to share with you one or at least one very powerful strategy for healing the queen wound within you while you create the beautiful, profitable Substack or body of work that you've been circling for years. All right. Because I know that every coach out there is telling you that this is a mindset issue. This is just procrastination. You need a better habit stack. You need to optimize your discipline, your consistency. You're probably telling yourself that you just need to get your shit together finally, right? And that's where all of y'all are wrong. Because this is so much deeper than that. In the world of neurodivergence and that or neurocomplexity, which is the psychologist Lindsay Mackworth coined the term neurocomplexity to encompass people who have any or all or some mix of the following: autism spectrum, quote unquote, disorder. I believe these things are distinction, not disorder. So for me, it's a little silly to call it disorder, but okay. ADHD, complex PTSD, and giftedness, which I think is important for you to catch that gifted is neurodivergent too. Genius is not typical. Gifted is not typical. So that is neurodivergence too. And in the world of neurodivergence or neurocomplexity, the phenomenon that I'm calling the queen wound is very related to what they call rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which has cousins like perfectionism, people pleasing, that performative, over optimization, aka procrastination, right? Over intellectualization. All of these things hook onto each other. And when we are talking about rejection sensitivity, we can just call it rejection sensitivity. It doesn't even, we don't even have to add the dysphoria. Rejection sensitivity. What we know is that shows up as like physical. It shows up as like physical pain in your body, physical tightness in your chest. Not even when you're criticized or rejected, when you even imagine that you are exposing yourself to potentially be criticized or rejected. I actually wrote a really great alternative definition to rejection sensitivity dysphoria yesterday. Um, Anxiously anticipating and overreacting to situations that even suggest, potentially threaten, or expose you to or imply rejection. You don't actually have to be criticized or rejected. And let me tell you why, because you were a genius. So when you were a little tiny child and you felt that pain of criticism, you learned how to do a lot of stuff. You learned how to avoid that pain. Okay. That's the traditional idea of rejection sensitivity. It's learned avoidance of the situations that um, potentially even expose you to rejection. And this is like your anxious avoidance of situations like that. What I want to do here today is reveal to you that there's an even older, like if that started when you were 5, there's a way, way, way older, deeper piece of this phenomenon that no one else is talking about. So this week I got an kind of an SOS message from a client who I love, who had created a digital product that was born from a series of really powerful observations that she'd had in her former industry as she was trying to do this thing that is actually kind of challenging for genius people, gifted women with ADHD to do. And she really worked it out for herself. And then she turned her own solutions into this digital product for a very, very specific archetype of human being who would need it. So along the way, because this is how we operate, because we seek validation often, and I think this is an internalized, this is what internalized patriarchy and capitalism causes us to do, because we're seeking validation to not be so exposed. It's not just me out here with my big idea now if other people have seen it and said that they like it, right? So she showed it to somebody who was in the general industry, but was not in this specific archetype of person that she created this product for. And the person really gave her very lukewarm response, was just like, that's cool. Like, I've seen better type thing. Okay. And she said, she texted me and was like, oh my gosh, it's like the wind is just fully out of my sails now. This thing that was such her passion project, um, she just felt deflated around. And so I talked to her a little bit about like, this is why we have a very specific way of launching products and offers that never exposes it to the wrong person for the offer, in part for this reason. There's very specific, we don't do focus groups, we don't ask people for their opinions. The only thing that we do is expose it to the person who we made it for, and offer them the chance to buy it or not. And then they buy it or they don't, and that's the only feedback we want or care about. But I wanted to share this because it's such a common way that gifted neurodivergent women in seeking that validation actually chronically end up in a situation of retreating on the brink of their own breakthrough body of work or product or offer, all right, or book or article. We just expose them to the exact wrong person because we need that validation. So if you feel like that's a pattern that you have, not just the thing about exposing it to the wrong people, but where you start to create your big passionate like thing that feels like your thing, and you have all this energy and you can get into goddess, they call it God mode. I'm gonna call it goddess mode about it. But then you're chronically like backing away on the brink of your breakthrough or playing small, or you do all the work to create the thing and then you crap out right before it's time to market it. Or like me, I've realized I've got patterns around um I will these are all upper limit patterns, right? Like from the book The Big Leap, that by the psychologist Gay Hendricks. Some of my our patterns, because we're not submissive, outwardly submissive women. So our patterns don't look like our self repression and self sabotage, aka self silencing patterns, don't look like a submissive woman's patterns would look like. They look like we be doing going ham kind of at the exact wrong stuff. And when it comes time to do the right stuff to really push our projects over the brink of the breakthrough, we step back. For me, that can include like, I have three special needs kids. So, like with my little one, I have optimized so much. I've literally moved us across the world to a place to find the right place for her to be. And we're kind of in that place. I mean, our life is great. Our school is amazing. 15 kids in the whole school. Like, it is amazing. I'm joining the board of the school. It's great. And there's still a couple things that I could tinker with and make better. And I started to. I started to like house hunt in Lisbon for a place there during the week so I could send her to this other school to try this thing. And I caught myself. I was like, hey, that's your self silencing pattern of blowing up your own spot. In fact, what I find to be a breakthrough question on this issue for myself, self inquiry is part of my method, the Tara-Nicholle method, for like life mastery, self mastery, money mastery, business mastery, like everything mastery, becoming a goddess, purging the patriarchy from my DNA. Um, and for me, I have started to ask myself the question when I see a pattern and I'm not sure if it's like, is this me reaching for the right self valuing thing, or is this me um, is this the queen wound at work within me? I ask myself the breakthrough question, does this pattern that I'm seeing within me have a self-silencing effect? Does this pattern that I'm seeing within me have a self-silencing effect? And if it does, that's a sign that I might be under the influence of the queen wound on this issue in my life. And that's a great question for you to ask yourself too. So let's talk about the symptoms of the queen wound. And then I'm going to share some frameworks you can use to sort of heal it and sidestep it while you're building your own beautiful body of work. Okay. Because, well, I'll save that for the strategy piece. So you might have the queen wound if deep down, you know that you have this destiny for greatness, this genius within you, and you know that you desire it to be fully recognized and fully monetized. I call this like we are here in this season, in this time. We neurodivergent, neurocomplex, goddess, fractal goddess, gifted, eldest daughter, whatever else you want, Scorpio, whatever else you want to call it, women, our brains, our feral Ferrari brains were made for this time right now. We were made for this. Okay. If you, and that for me, that the sort of role model version of my big self that's calling to me and calling my own greatness out from me right now in this season is a persona I call prolific paid priestess. Prolific paid priestess. Why do I call it that? I thought about, I'm not under the influence of the toxic capitalism, toxic patriarchalism, toxic capitalarchy anymore. However, I know that if you are just prolific and not paid, you will you can't actually do that too long. You got to be paid too because we do still live in this 3D world. We're collapsing timelines rapidly right now, but unless and until you realize make real your innate inborn capacity to support yourself and your life, to fund and authorize your own self and your own life to live exactly how you want to do it independently. Until you do that, you will always be side questing. You will always be hustling. You will always be life force dissipated and distracted seeking money because the not paid feels like very survival. It activates survival mode. It puts your nervous system in defense mode. And when I say we were made for these times were also made for us. These technologies were also made for us. We have everything. You have access right now to every technology you need to create the body of work that actually pays for your life in a beautiful way and nourishes your spirit and allows you to nourish the culture. I love that thinking. I just saw an interview with Jill Scott where she said somebody asked her why she came back out. Why you come outside right now? Because it was great and it's kind of wild out here. And she said, because I felt the culture needed nourishing. Don't you feel the culture needs nourishing? Don't you know you possess what the nourishing that the culture needs? Okay. So we are becoming prolific paid priestesses. If you don't know what I'm talking about with the priestess piece, go back to the video called my Fractal Goddess Theory video, and you'll start to see. If you don't know if you still don't know exactly how that implicates you, check out, let's see, I have an upcoming live session at the end of this week on next Sunday, where I'm going to begin to share some of the transmissions from the pre-patriarchal goddess Inanna, the queen of heaven and earth, um, on exactly what is ours to do in this season. I know a lot of women are having conversations right now about the patriarchy and how we're supposed to fix men. I have a different point of view. And a very specific transmission from the goddess on specifically what you and me are called to do in this coming season. And it's much more joyful than trying to fix somebody's dusty and diagnosed son. So you might so look in the description to this video. You'll see how to come to the live session and just get looped in, get connected in. All right, because this is like Wonder Woman Island we're creating. Just a bunch of women defending truth and peace and justice and rightness um and not fighting darkness because you don't have to fight darkness. You just turn the lights on. You just turn the lights on. The darkness goes away. Okay. So you might have the queen wound if deep down you have a genius that you want to be fully recognized and fully monetized. If you desire greater recognition and influence and thought leadership, you want to be the thought leader you came here to be. And that you know that a significant internal barrier to you creating a body of work that you always know you should have is this like sense of apprehension, or what did I say earlier? Anxious anticipation, overreacting to the anxious anticipation of situations that your increased public profile, the increased visibility of having your own Substack, having your own podcast, having your own YouTube channel, having your own book will bring. All right. You might have the queen wound if you've dreamed of having a platform of your own for years, but you kind of keep stopping yourself because you don't want to be like those influencers. Because you don't want to be like those guys, those like shallow surface dwellers, right? Because you don't want to be on the same platforms. Listen, when I first started evangelizing about why women like us should be on Substack, I had so many people be like, "But the alt right is there." Yeah. Andrew Tate was that week. I had a conversation with a client about that. Andrew Tate was number one on Substack. That week, Rachel Rogers, a voluptuous Black woman, knocked his ass out of the number one spot. Do you think I got any? I mean, I could not have been more delighted. This is the only way this change happens, guys. It doesn't happen if we keep hiding because we don't like who else is on the platform. It doesn't change because we keep begging the platforms to gatekeep and keep these people off. They're not going to do it. That's not their job. Our job is to flip the light switch on and be the light. The darkness must leave. It is law. Okay. So if you've dreamed of having a platform for years, but you keep telling yourself a story that you can't be on this because it's too shallow, or you can't be on that because those guys are over there, or you think it's too late for you to get into the, whatever business you think this business is, or you should have started 5 years ago, or you don't understand how you'll ever make money from it. So you just won't let yourself create and speak the words that you're feeling called to create and speak. You might have a queen wound. You might have the queen wound if you feel um, if you create endlessly for others and their platforms and their businesses, like if you can ghostwrite and create brands for other people, but you freeze up when it's your turn to shine, if you feel guilty or overwhelmed every time you try to market yourself, if you've helped other companies and employers or even clients make millions of dollars, but you can't really seem to dial in your own income stream, if you start a lot of projects like channels or newsletters or offers and then you quietly abandon or sabotage them, if you feel like you're going to die or vomit every time you start to take steps outside of your own internalized sort of repressive self-silence and comfort zone, um, if you feel like you're going to die or vomit if you post something that someone criticizes or no one reads it, um, this is all symptoms of the queen wound. And when you tune into it, this is much, 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 much more than just a visibility issue, because your dread is not just about a fear of being seen, it's a fear of being misunderstood and judged harshly or attracting unwanted criticism as your body of work grows. This is particularly acute for women who are sharing deeply personal stories or deeply spiritual messages. Like, I'm a UC Berkeley educated attorney, and I'm talking about how the pre-patriarchal goddess Inanna dismembered herself and buried these parts in you and me, and she's trying to return and remember them now. Okay, that's like kind of a disconnect, right? So that you would imagine would create some increased feeling of like exposure. The queen one is especially active in women who've always had this like deep magic. Like if you were one of those people, like even as a kid, other people were kind of like, huh, when she talks, like, I'm gonna listen. I may not do what you say, but like there's a sparkle to you. Um, this is the queen wound is especially active in many women who were gifted children, who were eldest daughters, who were first generation immigrants, who were first college graduates in their family, who were any of the ones that my friend Deepa Purushothaman calls the first, the few, the only. If you were a shiny, somebody called me shiny black lady once. I was like, okay, that's weird, but I actually kind of know what you mean. Like those of us who were on that like high achieving A whatever, A student sort of track, if you can relate to any of those things, I'm here to tell you today that your issue may not be that surface level visibility block or procrastination or unclarity or even just your inner critic per se. It's the queen wound, and it's not just personal to you. It's not just from your childhood wiring to perform and conform and please and produce for them. The queen wound is actually ancient. It is ancestral, it is cultural, and it is collective. It is way deeper and older than your childhood conditioning. It is literally, it dwells in the collective unconscious of all humanity as a shadow of the queen or like divine feminine ruler archetype. If you've ever heard the witch wound, where women with powers are afraid to use them because generations ago, witches were actually burned at the stakes. The queen wound is kind of like the witch wound's big sister. Okay. It is one of the most repressive energies in humanity right now because humanity is literally activating the queen, right? And the goddess, who, the goddess Inanna was a queen of heaven and earth. All right. So I discovered the queen wound. I coined the term the queen wound, and I discovered the queen wound when I first started to work with my own archetypes through like the lens of Jungian and archetypal depth psychology. I was teaching a system called the Sacred Money Archetypes, which was created by this woman, Kendall Summerhawk, who is delightful. And I realized how dominant the ruler archetype was in my own energies. So I did what a good little Jungian would do, and I began to read and study about the queens of myth and history to distill what I could learn from their patterns. And at the same time, I was like seeing in my business Soul Tour. Back then, my business was called Soul Tour. We had a life coaching and a business coaching arm. And in the business growth practice, I could see these women who were literally queen level women coming in all the time who had been making millions and millions of dollars for their employers as long as they stayed over here. But they also were like kind of living that smiling on the outside, crying on the inside, living in that chronic, honestly, getting autoimmune conditions, living in the chronic low grade um, misalignment that inflamed everything from low grade chronic whole life misalignment because they were living the shadow of the life they actually came here to live. They were building the shadow of the body of the work they came here to live. So when it comes time for them to step out and self-liberate by building their own body of work, they kept freezing up or like blowing something up in some other areas of their life. So the queen archetype is really our inner empire builder. She's the one that creates um I almost hate to use the word empire because of what it means in the world right now, but she creates empires for lack of I'll work on a better term that flow divine order to the people for the benefit of all. Okay. A modern woman with a strong dominant ruler archetype in her energies is like that old Jay-Z lyric, right? Put me anywhere on God's green earth, I'll triple my worth. They're powerful creators. However, in post-patriarchal history and myth, which is almost all that's out there, even a lot of the myths, this is what we're going to talk about on Friday, even a lot of the myths that we are taught are pre-patriarchal, like the myth of Inanna's descent, I have discovered are not. Like patriarchy had already begun to infect the Inanna's story by the time that particular poem, story, cycle of poems was written. So I've begun to be this like and spelunking through through history to find because she, the queen of heaven and earth, goddess Inanna, was actually pre-patriarchal. She predated patriarchy. And so I've begun to like investigate and research and find those pre-patriarchal tellings of her stories so that we can sort of distill there's all this juice in there for you and for me for what we're doing right now in this season. In post patriarchal history and myth, there are very few examples of queens who took the steps to expand and establish the fullness of the power they were born with and were not also exiled or dispossessed or imprisoned or beheaded. Shout out Marie Antoinette. Shout out Queen Liliuokalani, right? That's why we have to look way further back. And that pattern of queens stepping out to claim what's theirs, not just ceremonially. There's lots of just ceremonial queens who are positioned in a place, uh, positioned on a throne by virtue of their relationship with their father or husband, ceremonially to protect patriarchy, to protect property, which does not exist, but whatever. Um, Plenty of examples of those. It's the queens who set out to expand themselves. Very few examples of that. And so that's the root cause, that pattern of exile, dispossessed, betrayed, imprisoned, beheaded, stopped. That's the root cause of your queen wound. It's a pattern. When I say it's archetypal, what I mean is that it's a pattern of psyche and emotion and energy that manifests as a very like primordial, bodily, heavy feeling energy. It feels like it's in your body. It feels like energy draining from your bloodstream when you begin to take real, powerful, significant steps out of your comfortable career building somebody else's stuff and into building your own body of work, your own content platform, your own, whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be a business, your own ministry, your own um, platform. So what's happening? Neurobiologically, what's happening is that this queen wound, aka rejection sensitivity dysphoria, aka, is causing you to self-silence because you feel that nervous system level defense mode, that fight or flight level danger. You feel the same hormonal activation and nervous system activation as you would feel if someone were pointing a gun at you, as you would feel if you were on a battlefield and bullets were whizzing past you. And I think it's fascinating that in that context, then we're like, just write a book right now. Like when you feel like that, you're not writing no books. Okay. And what I want you to know is that this feeling is very much born of internalized every archy, internalized toxic capital archy. And this feeling is also not real. It is real and it's not real. The feeling is real. The reality is some women actually have been endangered in this season, plus in history, for the things that they have said or written. And it's also not real because the statistical likelihood that the blog post that you're trying to click publish on will cause you to vomit or die is nearly zero. So when we experience that feeling of like over perfecting, so we're actually shaving all the edges, everything objectionable out of whatever we're writing or speaking, that feeling of vomit or die, if someone sees this and doesn't like it, if my boss sees this and doesn't like it, if my mom sees this and doesn't like it, trust my mom has seen it all and doesn't like it. um, you have to, if you want to be, and maybe this is the biggest takeaway here. One of the most threatening things that a woman can do in this world, in this moment, is to think for herself. And if you value yourself enough to desire to become a fully self expressed, fully happy, fully healthy, fully wealthy, fully wise, fully love riddled, fully self expressed woman, the one thing I guarantee you is that everyone ain't gonna like it and everyone ain't gonna like you. So the more rapidly you can get good with like being disliked, disapproved of, feeling that exposure. I'm just out here. I don't know how people are going to react. It doesn't matter. That feeling of deep loyalty to you, for me, that just began in my daily morning pages, my writing, and the commitment not to self-censor there, and then it began to infect the rest of how I be in the world, systematically, but that was the beginning. That is that's how it must dissolve. You have to titrate it. You have to build this as a muscle, full self-expression without censoring yourself as a muscle. So, why does this happen? You were conditioned in childhood to perform and conform and people please and produce in order to get attention, affection, approval, the delusion of love. That's why saying things that make other people unhappy, feel uncomfortable, feel like you might vomit or die. This is why. I mean, our parents weren't doing this to us because they don't like us. They were doing it to us because they've been taught this is what good parenting of girls is. Um, we've been taught that we were taught to derive our self-worth from being in relationships where men approve of us. We were taught to do that as because our parents were taught that that's how girls are safe in the world. We were taught to excessively focus on the needs and opinions of others versus self. Um, we were taught to be gentle and kind. I notice the things that when people don't approve of me, that, they say, when they don't approve of women, they say narcissist, bitch, spinster, arrogant, single. Um, when they do approve of women, they call them gentle and kind and giving and selfless. I've kind of gotten to where I feel like selfless is maybe the worst insult somebody could make. And you can see, I'm trying to say this in ways without making this be about the patriarchy. You can see that this conditioning definitely has roots in the patriarchy, which the patriarchy is as yes, it is what you think it is, and it is also our own ways of being that support these power structures. So we're going to talk about the queen wound a lot at book club on Friday. But what I want you to know right now, or on Sunday, I'm not sure why I keep saying Friday. Look in the description for the details. But what I want to make sure you know right now is what it costs you. Because the queen wound is at the root of the good idea graveyard that keeps you up at night, keeps your chest tight, keeps your organs inflamed, keeps you wondering whether you'll ever be able to be your big self or do your big dreams before you die, keeps you um, keeps you stressed in that constant inflammation of living, feeling like you're living a lie because you're living a shadow life, a shadow of the life you came here to live. The queen wound costs you the ability to build the body of work that fulfills your sacred contracts, which is a trillion line item long list of the things that you came to be, do, have, create, and experience in this life. The queen wound costs you your own ability in everyday life to speak up, say what you mean, and ask for what you need. The queen wound is a self-silencing, a harsh self-silencing energy within you. Because like I said before, we're geniuses, so we don't wait for someone to actually criticize us or our work. Instead, we anticipate the fuck out of it and or even share our work with someone who's pretty likely to take the wind out of our sails in a way that protects us from having to expose our work to broader audience. We do this in the thinking that we'll get their feedback, we'll perfect the thing beyond critique, and then we'll put it out broadly, and then we'll never vomit or die because we'll never fail. When actually, getting it in front of the right people for it is how the right people can help co-create what you're creating with you, right? The people you know and are sending it to may not be those right people, all right? And more importantly, the people that you're likely to send your work to for feedback before you put it out into the world, their relationship with you or their relationship with themselves may actually be threatened by you breaking out of your comfort zones and limitations and creating your best body of work. So there are very complex reasons that I urge you to protect your baby body of work and stop asking for feedback from the just people in your life and just start putting it out into the world so it can find its right people. Okay. So what I want you to hear is that receiving criticism, your work not hitting feels scary, but I assure you that this far scarier thing is not being your big self, doing your big dreams, or creating the body of work you came here to create before you die. That's even scarier. And what's even scarier are all of the health consequences of self silencing, from autoimmune conditions to heart conditions to deep depression to shortened lifespan. Um, the health consequences of self silencing are can almost not be overstated. So, what shifts when we break this pattern? What shifts is you become unstoppable, basically. If you become a woman who does not operate in a self silencing way in this world with your neurodivergent feral Ferrari brain, with all of the technologies that are available to you, with a little bit of help from somebody who knows how to build a platform, you can literally become unstoppable. What you create becomes see, what happens is you stop sending these chaotic and incoherent messages to whatever you wanna call it, the universe, all that is. I mean, I think that you are actually made of God, so you're like think of this, um the things that you think about and say are and write are more likely to happen because you've thought them and said them and written them, okay? Your mind is such a powerful creator that it's actually a little reckless and dangerous to let it just think any old thought that's been implanted in there. And what happens when you are under the influence of the queen wound is that you are sending out a message that says you desire to do this work or create this body of work, and you're also sending a lot of messages that are like, "No, please protect me." No, I don't actually. And so when you're sending these chaotic and incoherent messages, you are getting incoherent, mixed results. When you begin to create without the queen wound hindering you, you start to send out a very much more coherent, much more consistent, much more cohesive broadcast signal and a magnet for your work. You start to see that you don't actually have to do a whole lot of physical effort or like know the right people even to make your work do what it needs to do and bring in opportunities to you. They just will start coming to you because of the power of your signal. You stop killing your own dream. You stop feeling like you've got one foot on the brakes and one foot on the gas of your own best shit, and you take the one foot off the brake. Okay. Your good idea graveyard starts to shrink because you get the ovariush to cancel, just close some tabs that are not the things that you're really going to work on. You've got a lot of great ideas. That's not the issue, but you start to be able to focus a little more effortlessly. You start a little more powerfully. You start to make and a lot less effort fully. You start to make pre-commitments and pre-decisions to yourself and your body of work, and you start to be able to keep them. Okay. So how do we break this pattern as we create our own bodies of work? Again, we're going to talk a lot more about this on in all of the book club sessions, actually, in all of the Inanna transmission sessions. And I'm teaching a bunch of mini courses on this and doing some writing prompts and writing challenges about this on the A list, which is my Substack. Um, let's be real. When you do start to create your own body of work, you do open yourself up to you expose yourself, right? By opening yourself up to engagement with other people on your content, you do expose yourself. I love Substack because it's like the closest thing we have in this day and age to the forum, the Greek forum, or the Library of Alexandria, right? Which is just like these places where all of the public thinkers of our time are gathering to have deeper conversations than are being had in the like mainstream media. You do have to come into it knowing that these people don't know you. right? You will have to build up some thick skin. I think of what I'm creating in my own groups as the tribe of thick skin and soft hearts, right? You have to become okay with people not understanding you. It has to be okay for people to not like you or to not like what you write. Let's see, I've really been on Substack in earnest a couple of months, and I've gotten a couple of emails. Got an email from a white lady who didn't like the way she thought I was talking about white men, which was not even accurate. I got another email from a woman who used to be who I've known for a long time or ish. She was a client long time ago of my another business of mine. Um, and she had some choice words to say. She said what did she say? I exude only child energy. And I was like, yeah, girl, my new brand, one of my brands of my work, it's called self-centered. Like, all you just did was give me a compliment. I'm not out here trying to live everybody else's life. I don't derive my worth from my relationship with men or anyone else. I'm good from in here. Great. Okay. But very specifically, you need to be able to see when you're future tripping and anxiously projecting, anxiously anticipating criticism that could come. And you need to be able to identify that, hey, there's the way people work is like stimulus and response. Usually what happens is you take this step into your creating your body of work, stimulus, that anxiety of anticipating criticism uh, comes, that feeling comes, that you take a step into creating your body of work, it creates that feeling of anxious anticipation of criticism. Let's call that whole phenomenon stimulus. And your response can be whatever it takes to silence yourself, whether that's a crisis in your life, in your relationships, at home, a made up crisis. You have to move again. That's one of mine. You got to start a new school. It's going to take a lot of time. Whatever it is, you start sending it to people who you're not going to get great feedback from. Okay. This is about seeing that pattern while you're doing it. You cannot create new capacity for the arena except from in the arena. You have to be in that moment, be creating the things that you would have stopped you before, see that pattern come up. And at first, all you got to do is like create a little extra space between stimulus and response. At first, you don't even have to change the response. But I guarantee you, having heard me talk about this right now today, you're going to have a different experience the next time you are about to retreat on the brink of a breakthrough. The next time you're about to retreat on the brink of publishing a post, you're going to take a longer pause, have a longer space between stimulus and response than you've had before. And in that space is when you get to choose to do something different. You get to choose to sit with the discomfort of anxiously anticipating criticism and click publish anyway. Send the email anyway. Not side quests today to distract yourself from what you were doing anyway. Okay. When you do that, over every time you do that, you build the muscle that future proofs your body of work, your own ability to self express from rejection sensitive dysphoria. Okay. And know this probably some woman is going to email you and say something. It's honestly almost always another woman in my experience because it's the ones who are the most terrified of their own they're the ones that have the most heightened rejection sensitivity dysphoria themselves. So the idea of self-expressing in a way that wouldn't be palatable to their partners. I literally had a woman tell me one time, she asked me about my daughter. Oh my gosh, I forgot the story. This needs to go in the book. She asked me about my daughter and whether she's learning how her Portuguese is. And, I said, oh, we've had some other learning priorities for her up to now. Um, she said, oh, my husband would be so disappointed in you. And I said it as nicely as I could say it because of where we were, but my long and my short was, your husband doesn't even get a fucking vote on being I don't know your husband. I don't care what your husband thinks. But really, can you see how much this is where like practicing that one of the four agreements, the one that's like, take nothing personally. I'm like, all you just did was tell me about you and your husband and tell me about how you define your life by what your husband tells you to do and his judgment or lack of judgment or what he would be. You out here projecting what he would think about what I do, honey. Ain't nobody got time for that. And do you see how it's not actually, that's not even about the men. That's about her internalized patriarchy. No man was involved in that conversation. All right. So you have to know that their internalized oppression may rise up as they experience your radical self expression. And you'll have to know that that ain't got shit to do with you and you press publish any. Okay. So I've got a whole mini course coming up on the A list about, I mean, I have a whole book coming out about how to heal the queen wound, how to use Inanna's, the pre-patriarchal understanding of Inanna's powers and how to overcome the queen wound and unself-repress, how to stop self-silencing in very big picture ways so you can be, do, have, create, experience whatever you came here for in this season. But one thing I want you to hear right now is let's talk about how you can. I want you to start overcoming this queen wound right now. And I know that most of us think that we need to overcome it in order to start creating a body of work. And that is the opposite of the truth. Okay. The reason this body of work is burning a hole in your pocket to create it is actually because the revolution is trying to happen within you first. Your body of work exists and wants to exist to heal and dissolve the hindering effects of the queen wound on you because it's very contagious. When you heal yours, that one heals hers, that one heals hers, that one heals hers. So I don't want you to fight against the gravity of the patterns that you feel within you, but I do want you to have those moments of insight that add space between stimulus and response, that shine light on the shadows so they can dissolve. I want you to start making some pre-commitments and pre-decisions so that you can begin building the muscles of shackles off self-expression over time. And yes, there are lots of ways you can do this. I love the four agreements for this. To take nothing personally is a great pre-decision, pre-commitment to make in your mind. On the A-list paid tier and the A-list founding tier, we do a daily ritual that recalibrates your nervous system. I have some tools in some of my products, like the Inner Critic Cure has a tool called the Overreaction Diary, Surfing the UGG. Tara Brock's book, Radical Acceptance, has a practice called RAIN. You can Google that, actually, RAIN, RAIN, and Tara Brock, and you'll find the 4 steps of RAIN. Again, writing, just if you did nothing but just uncensored morning pages every day, that would definitely begin the process. If you start to publish the fire that you write little by little, that also facilitates the process. That's why we have a Substack Academy for those who want to do that with my support. But the number one thing I would say, if I had to offer you one strategy right now, is I want you to adopt the point of view, the paradigm we'll call put the audience last. Put the audience last. I first heard this said this way listening to Rick Rubin, the producer, give an interview about his book on creative power. I'll put a link in the description. But he says, the audience comes last because when you're creating real art, or I think any kind of body of work, when we start optimizing for what someone else will think before we even begin, those thought patterns and cognitions and conditioning to perform and conform and produce and perfect and script too much and think too much cause us to think ourselves right out of ever doing it. It begins to be this very unvirtuous, very harsh, very unpleasant, very painful in our bodies cycle of anxiously anticipating, overreacting to potential projected future rejection. And we just can talk and think ourselves right out of it. So, putting the audience last as a rule is an invitation to create the content you would just love to create for the sheer expansive joy of creating it without fretting and stressing and worrying or about how to optimize it for anything, okay? In fact, I think that putting the audience last is actually a call to stop trying to optimize your own self and your own life. Stop trying to optimize every damn thing, okay? Because I think the gifted girls among us grown up can really we're good at that. We've got a PhD fucking D in optimizing ourselves for other people, right? So like putting the audience last is not even just about your body of work or creativity. It's an invitation to stop white knuckle controlling everything about your life and how you live it and who you are and how other people see you. Okay? Because it's actually limiting how delicious and how electric and how fulfilling and how beautiful your life can be. You're not the boss of it all. There's all these beautiful things out here trying to get to you that cannot get to you if you're holding on so tight to the steering wheel. Okay? So, this is my invitation to you to stop turning your body of work, the body of work that's burning a hole in your pocket to get out. Stop making it be a dementor. You know, like in the Harry Potter thing, we keep turning our own bodies of work, our own. I have a client the other day, she was just talking about this new podcast she wants to create. And I'm like, girl, that's a vibe. Do it. And she was like, oh, but if it's so distracting because if I have to go record 40 hours of audio next week, I was like, what? No, what you don't that's the level of false prerequisites hard mode that we gifted neurodivergent women will do of being like, if I'm gonna start a podcast, I have to create 40 hours of content next week. No, ma'am. If you wanna start a podcast, you have to start a podcast. Create one conversation and post it. I know we don't trust that we'll keep at it, and so that's why we tell ourselves we have to do this, but it's just another self-silencing strategy. So your body of work is not a dementor. It doesn't require you to do terrifying, adrenalized, hard, burdensome things before you can prosper. You're not 4 anymore. You don't have to prove yourself worthy of your spot on the planet in order to get love and approval. Okay. So if you notice that you have a pattern of making your projects into perfectionistic, heavy lift projects, if that's what you want it to be, it's like the song I do with my kid. I am what I say I am, no matter what I say I am. So if you make the project be a heavy lift project, it's gonna become that. If you make the project feel light and like play and like joy, the goddess likes to create through your joy. So it'll become that. All right. So be light with it and play with it and stop trying to guess what people will buy and drop into the deeper levels of your soul and allow this part of your creating to be pure action. This is what Alan Watts would say. It's just pure action, like for the love of it, for the joy of it. And then you'll put your reps in for the love of it, for the joy of it, and you'll start to mold the clay of it over time. And don't let it start out as a being about hitting a target metric or driving an outcome or making it happen or having your one big hit so you can go take a nap and die. No. The whole point of you building your body of work right now, when you begin, is to show yourself, to lavish the love on yourself of doing the self valuing thing, of creating from a place of full, unfettered, delicious, and deep self expression. That's how you heal the queen wound. Okay. And then, as a happy accident, you'll probably also begin to build out the elements of whatever it is that will, when you create like that, you're like rolling out a spiritual red carpet to the people who love and would love to work with you. Okay. Even if your content isn't directly related to what you do for a living, it still works out that way. Okay. And you don't have to understand with your thinking mind exactly how this all works. All right. My job today is to just help you dissolve some of your old thought distortions and access a deeper level of yourself before the patriarchy, beneath the conditioning, so you can take what you access and start to flow it to whatever purposes light you the freak up. All right, that's how you create a lick the plate life. So check out the description, subscribe and don't miss. I'll see you. I'll see you Sunday, and maybe before then too. All right.